met with an attractive lady, that is how you see it. You don't need to act on it. The brain, Isaac, okay, the brain, a humankind's brain, the way it's wired, the way it's programmed, it is programmed to conflict. The way the brain is programmed, it is programmed to conflict. And that is a pattern that is caught up in it. In a psychological world, I'm doing this because I will get this. That is the conflict. When I don't get this, there is conflict. Even when I get this, I will disregard the result so that I can get a better result. Because the conflict is always in control, passively, directly, indirectly, consciously, unconsciously. And now the brain thinks that when it solves this thing, it will solve the conflict. But when it solves that thing, it will analyze the result. When it analyzes the result, again there is conflict consistently, and it is a consciousness that exists in a human brain. In a humankind's brain, not your brain, not my brain, but a humankind's brain. And being aware of that allows you to know that the consciousness that exists isn't an individual consciousness, it is a humankind's consciousness, and the decision has already been done. You don't need to decide, or you don't need to disagree. The decision has already been done. You met with an attractive lady, that is how you see it. You don't need to act on it. She walked away, that is the past. You don't need to act on it. That perception in it, that action is what will set you free. Like it's just how you perceive things, and know that that is how you perceive things. And it's not your way of perception, but that perception exists in a humankind's consciousness. We are inquiring, Isaac, can you break that pattern of conflict instantly without breaking it gradually? Because when you say that I'm doing this, let me concentrate on my job, okay? And then maybe after 1 year or 2 years, the conflict that I have psychologically and how I felt about it, it will be dealt. After 2 years, things will be fine. The perception that I need a woman, I must have a woman in my life, and now I need to concentrate on a specific project so that I can get a specific result. When I get this result, I will get the lady who can fully understand me. Because now that is the perception, right? How can you end that conflict? Because having that perception, it is now the conflict. Because psychological time, it is the conflict. Having that perception allows you to think that when I am specifically in this manner, I will get the lady that I want. But after reaching there, you won't get that lady. That psychological time and conflict exists in it. You thought that after 5 years, you will forget. After five years, you haven't dealt with that. Because of the psychological world that breeds conflict. And that is a consciousness that exists. That is a pattern. Okay. I am meaning Isaac. By time, she walked away. She cheated. I liked her, but she rejected me. I admire, I desire that. I can get this. We are saying, telling yourself that I will do this, I will examine and condition, then understand my mind, then unprogram my mind. It is a pattern in it itself. Unconditioning it, it is a pattern in it itself. When I work on myself, I will get the lady that I want. It is a condition in it itself. As far as I have money, I have my parents, I have this one, I don't need a lady in my life. It is a condition in it itself. I just need to sleep with women, then I won't get attached, because that equals to you detaching emotionally from women. It is a condition in it itself. Now you are unconditioning that brain, and that breeds what? Psychological conflict. That terror of conflict that you are trying to be free from. You are seeking freedom because of that. right? I won't marry, I will be single. It is a condition and a program that you are trying to uncondition your mind, and it is a pattern in it itself. Okay? Like every understanding and perception that you have psychologically because you think you will get a specific result, that is a conditioning or unconditioning of the brain, which equals to you having psychological time, and the psychological time, it is the conflict itself. That obsession, that perception, that wanting, that desiring, that expecting, that working, that involving, it is the psychological time, and that is the conflict. And I don't want you to understand me and understand the verbal words. Like, you have to let the brain see it as it, because that is the only crack the brain can have, because the brain can now be in contact with that. Like, it has to see it. The psychological time, it is the conflict. Because after 5 years, biologically, we are growing up. But now, psychologically, there is always a conflict in it. And the brain has to know it. Not the verbal words and how I express or explain it. It's the fact of it. And you have to see it as it is. And no one can guide you to see it as it is. But you have to let the brain of a humankind see it. Is this too much? I can do certain things thinking that I will get a specific result. Then my attachment to the result is happiness. Now that is the conditioning of the brain in a psychological world, because that is your subconscious reality. And the gap between your subconscious reality and the expectation, it is the psychological time. Because there is no now. There is only working to get the future, because the future is the definition of the happiness. And that time in a psychological world creates conflict. You have to be creative without getting attached to the result. The result is just the what is. It doesn't mean you don't need to put effort, but you have to enjoy the process. You need to stop conditioning yourself to be in a specific way, because that in it itself, it's a program, it's a condition, it is a wiring process, a pattern that your subconscious mind has, and your reality is being defined by your subconscious perception of reality. Do you know that most of the time when things happen, we examine them by the past? What we follow, what we do, our influences. The background of it is not entirely by who you are. And who you are is your self-awareness. And I'm not talking about self-awareness of the surrounding, but self-awareness of the natural state of being in the body and inside the skin unit itself. That has no influence of what we define is reality, but the existence of that nature inside yourself. We are asking, can we instantly break that perception that exists in the real world, because it is a condition that a humankind, and this is a consciousness that exists in each one of us. It's not the brain of the speaker, not your brain, not the brain of anyone else, not the brain of your parents, the brain of a humankind. Can it break that conditioning instantly so that it can be free and it can have freedom? That is what led us to this. I want to be single. Women nowadays, they want everything. That is the condition. When you say, I want to be single, you are involving time. Now there is conflict, because psychological time equals to conflict. When you say it's the what is without having a relationship with it, and registering it as you need to do this, you need to act this way, you have to do this, you need to be specifically disciplined and do specific things to get a specific result. You don't need all that. You just need to see and look for a crack, because there is no time that can heal your psychological world. That is what we're trying to say. Once there is conflict and you haven't dealt with it, engaging in pleasure with different types of women, engaging in alcohol, engaging in anything, even when the conflict or the stress that you have is because of the business or the work or where you work or the company you work in, there is no man, there is no specific period of time that can solve that. You have to be aware of that. I have been going through this where I work, right? The first thing to accept is I have a relationship to this, and I created that relationship, and I created that relationship because I wasn't just only creative, but I had self-interest. And the self-interest is I wanted this in return. Or maybe I have been doing this too much. When did it become too much? Why do you perceive the pressure that comes from the board, the managers, the CEO? Why do you perceive them as it's too much? It's just how they perceive it, and it exists. That consciousness exists. Once you have self-interest to that, now you carry a larger risk of conflict in a psychological world, being in a specific way, being disciplined, and having a specific belief will resolve your psychological what? Conflict. No, it doesn't. Because that is the expectation. What you experience at work, it's how you perceive it. It doesn't matter if the pressure is too much. It's just what is. You do not need to agree or disagree. And no, I don't want you to look at it as I am saying it. Like you have to fully be aware of that. And just see it psychologically as it is. Because your nature, instead of being, has to be fully present. But when there is a psychological conflict, it's never fully present. Because it's always looking for a way to solve the existence of a specific problem, thinking that that will lead to a specific result. But it only confirms that you get a result of what you perceived. And if what you perceived is the result that you needed doesn't happen, now there is conflict. Your manager shouted at you, right? You think that when you solve that problem, the shouting will stop, or maybe they will apologize, or maybe that shouting will be removed because it still exists in your subconscious mind. Or maybe the solving of the existence of this problem, it will solve the shouting. Just solve the problem without expecting it to solve the shouting, because the shouting is the consciousness, is the habit, is the character that exists in them, and that is just what is. And maybe I just need to do what I need to do, and that is just what is. And don't see it as I am telling you. Just let the brain know it and meet it head on. I don't know how I can explain it to you guys. How can you stop obsessing over women? You can only stop obsessing over women when you know that actually there are no attractive women. It's only a condition and a program that is in your brain. Women rejecting you, it is not true, entirely true. It's just a lady not being willing to experience a feeling that exists when you and her are trying to create a specific definition of what a relationship is. And the feeling that exists between you and her, it's an energy feeling. And she's not willing to experience that energy feeling. And it has nothing to do with her rejecting you. She walked away because of this and that. No. She just walked away because she wanted to. And that's just a fact.